Hey guys, Sam Hill. So posting my voice thread here on classism, sexism, racism, this whole idea of white privilege, um, which is the topic of this week's discussion. And you can see all around me here the wedding vases and all the decorations. We're getting ready for the wedding coming up here next Saturday. So um, a lot of stuff going on in the background here. And I guess this whole piece kind of hit home last night as I was kind of letting the material sink in, and I had just finished. Actually, I had, in addition to what was um, assigned, I also um, watched a web clip on YouTube from Associate Professor Gary Bailey at Simmons College, and he put together a wonderful lecture. It's about an hour and 15 minutes long. I encourage you guys to listen to it. He's very insightful in this topic area. I took a lot of notes here, so I'll try and go over um, as much of it as I can here, but in our discussion. But this really hit home for me last night. No, I had finished up all my reading and everything on it, and again, I was just kind of letting it sink in, and Celeste was online. She had to, at the last minute here, where she's trying to figure out how to fix a couple of her dresses for the wedding and for a couple of the girls, and so she's online looking at YouTube clips and on how to extend, put add a corset back to the dresses, because they're a little bit too small, so she wants to make them bigger. And so she's looking at them, and of course the pre-made ones are a little bit like $40 a piece, so we're not going to pay that for a corset pack. So she's decided to do it homemade. So she's looking at YouTube clips online, and clicks on a YouTube clip on how to make the loops on the back of the dress on the sides, so that she can run the laces through and turn it into a lace up back. And so she clicks on it. She's watching the video, and I'm not really paying attention at first. I'm kind of just just hanging out, and but after a little while, she draws my attention to the screen. I look, and it's a colored lady. Should be essentially what happened was Celeste didn't want to use the material. Didn't want to buy expensive material, and so she's looking at a YouTube clip on how to use ribbon for the lacing, for this whole getup. And so I just thought it was interesting. I look at the screen, and there's a colored lady, and call it prejudice if you will, but there's a colored lady, doing an instruction on how to sew this ribbon and fold it in half and sew it and pull it inside out, so that the whole 9 yards. And but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about how interesting is that, first of all, that YouTube is available, that she can pass this information along, but secondly, how some time ago, a long time, that we had the slavery and everything, and how a lot of these skills, white women don't even really know. Um, some may, but a lot of them don't, and the fact that that Celeste, was looking at this clip, and ribbon's pretty cheap, and so that was the next thing that came to mind was this whole prejudice, of cheap equating to colored people, and so here I am catching myself over and over, in my own thinking of, this prejudice that I clearly have, that and it's just coming to the surface while I'm watching this video, but it, I can't help it. It's just there, and of course it takes these situations to kind of bring that prejudice out. But in a sense, I still myself personally don't feel that I'm a prejudiced person. So where does this thinking come from? And of course, it's our past experiences and what have you. And but like Dr. Bailey describes, there's this dissonance between what we believe and what we actually do. So he describes how a person may believe in fairness, justice, and equality, but still act differently. And and when he says this, he's talking about and he's referencing people coming into the United States and how they come to the United States because of fairness and equality and justice, so they believe in those things. But when they get here, they're met with all this indifference, and so they they act differently than how how they would because of the prejudice that greets them. So and he relates another really neat story about preconceived potential or ability, where children get tracked based on preconceived notions of ability or potential. In particular, a story about Studs Terkel, who did a piece on a young man who was a teacher in Chicago, Illinois, confronting what it meant as a teacher to go in with preconceived notions about his students. And as a new teacher, he was given what he described as the worst class. And, in effect, he also described that this worst class was also predominantly black and Latino, and that he began to react towards the students in a way that predicted they would not learn because he didn't believe that they could learn. So, in effect, he treated them like they could not learn, and they fulfilled his prophecy. So, just a kind of a really neat story of this prejudice that we have, and it can affect anyone at any level, and especially people in power, and that's where it really affects those on the outside. And I say on the outside, but um Dr. Bailey describes how um, yes, we have um, these reinforcing variables in our environment. Our friends, our family, our church, which all kind of reinforce this ethnocentrism that places everybody else on the outside, so that it's very difficult to infiltrate, to to change this prejudice, because it's all around us, and it's not necessarily prejudice towards any particular um, skin color, but there's all these different forms of prejudice um, existing, and that's mostly a derivative of people coming together to form groups, small groups, in society, um, and this power struggle that seems to evolve as different groups start to merge together and form biases towards other members of the new group, so to speak. And so, um, very insightful, though, Gary Bailey of Simmons College. Um, he describes how the way we construct social placement of people into society can result in resentment of one group over another if one is disadvantaged. So, we think about uh, influx of different cultures into our society, and uh, how they should be given equal treatment. Most, I'd say, most of the reaction that came out of, Lewiston with with the influx of Somali people into the area was that, most of the reaction was that they were advantaged over, local people, and that they were getting benefits that others weren't able to get, and things of that nature. So, again, another example of how it fosters discrimination and resentment. And again, this whole idea of racism has not evolved in a sense that it's gotten worse. It's always been there. Um, it's always been there ever since the beginning. So, but again, like Dr. Bailey described, um, by accident of history, um, the people, particular people or groups are in positions that give them advantage over others. So, in that sense, there's not in that sense there's that kind of brings us back to where this power struggle originated, in this whole idea of particular groups or particular interests having power over others, domination. Um, and let me see here. And so, Dr. Bailey gives an example of a black man that's given a white prosthesis to help him walk. He was missing a leg, and so inevitably the gentleman refused to use it, and ended up staying the course in his home. This whole idea of white band-aids, and why don't we offer black band-aids, or um, you know mulatto band-aids, what have you. Um, Again, reinforces this, not just the power struggle that has been enculturated into our society, but the racism, the sexism. Well, actually, it doesn't reinforce the sexism, but the racism in particular. Um, and in terms of sexism, obviously, um, there's been some groundwork laid towards females, and homosexuals, for our society. But again, there's so many other forms, classifications, gender stereotypes that aren't necessarily accounted for yet, that exist in our society, that even sexism is going to continue to be a racy topic for quite some time. Yeah, and in discussion of what can we do to change all of this, in particular, these people in power are being asked to advocate for changes that disadvantage themselves or their family. So here we are, here I am, a white man, and you're asking me to advocate for a change that would give me less benefits, put less food on my table, um, makes it difficult for me to make decisions, that would affect my family in that kind of way. And although, you know, although again, I don't feel like I'm a discriminatory person. Um, this whole idea of white privilege is embedded into our society at a bureaucratic level, um, and policy until policy is changed um, to change, to level the playing field, so to speak. I don't see that ever changing. So some long-term approaches that Dr. Bailey describes are personal development and exposing ourselves to situations that require us to reflect, and in particular, putting ourselves, in positions where we have to reflect on who we are, and as a whole, as a culture, and that's difficult to do. Um, and especially where we a typical American spends 8 hours a day at work. So this is where we're going to learn, um, expose ourselves to different cultures. So again, companies would have to be on board with equal opportunity, and making sure that they have a good a good blend of different people in their establishments in order to promote awareness and things of that nature. But again, it all comes down to policy. If they're not forced to do it, they won't do it. Um, and we fall back on this whole idea of hiring for um, hiring people for their specific skill set, um, and not necessarily because of the color of their skin or because of any other discriminatory factors that may be involved. So then uh, the kind of the playing field is even. But he asks, Dr. Bailey asks, what our interpersonal capacity is to shift power. Again, all falling back on, in my mind, policy. But he describes how we've all been given bad information about the world and each other. So essentially, our not just our past experiences, but the experiences of our forefathers. The all these things that have been passed down, this information that has been passed down over centuries, um, has just been kind of biased. And to underscore that point, he notes how race as a biological fact has been invalidated by biologists and physicists, um, and that you know a particular group is able to influence outcomes by having access to spheres of influence, and control of government offices, institutions, etc. So, in particular, where it concerns the election. So now, with the election of Obama, 2 terms now, um, Dr. Bailey looks at the election as, when you see all the states pop up and red versus blue, and he looks at that as how racism has not gone away in this country. There are parts of the class warfare anyway. Classism, in that sense, has not gone away in this country. That there are parts of the country that look like they're still at civil war with each other, and is absolutely right. And that kind of hits home when put in that perspective of actually watching the election and kind of seeing it play out. Um, so again, having ruled out biology as a factor, um, there's this institutional and structural racism that is embedded into our society, which contains social, economic, educational, and political policies that operate to foster discriminatory outcomes, or give preferences to one group or another. Um, Dr. Bailey describes it, derives its genesis from the origins of race as a concept. So, as you think of how people have migrated and evolved, and power has been transferred from one group to another, or given to one group from another. And so we think of the United States and how we will come into a country that is in civil war or what have you, war-torn country, and give firearms and money and humanitarian aid to a particular tribe who's fighting against this particular regime. And what are we doing there? Are we balancing things off? Making it more of an even fight. What are we doing there? But essentially, we're giving them part of our power. We're allowing them to use our power to their advantage. And what is that? Is the United States prejudiced towards these other powers, these other parties, and for what reasons? And we're not we aren't the power group, over there. So we don't know what they don't we don't know what they know. We don't see what they see. Um, we aren't them. We're just coming in as an outsider, trying to um, influence what's happening in these societies, and that implies some level of racism. Um, and so I can see where members of other cultures in our societies look at the United States as being a racist and prejudiced country. Um, and that doesn't settle well with me. Um, but I guess in the end, in the United States, white skin in the United States, as Peggy McIntosh describes, um, opens many doors for whites, whether or not we approve of the way dominance is conferred on us. So again, until policies are aligned with this whole idea of equality, um, there there will be no end to racism, classism, sexism, um, or any of these other isms that that are described. Thank you.